Hi, Charles County. Welcome to another episode of Cracking the Code, a new series dedicated to helping community members learn the what and why of regulations here in Charles County. Joining us for this special series is Liz Theobalds, our Deputy County Attorney. Liz, thanks for being here again today.
And thanks for inviting me again.
And Reed Faasen, who is I want to make sure I get your title correct, Reed, our Zoning Administrator.
Thank you, Doria. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks so much for coming in, Reed. And Reed, your job is a bit of a complicated one, yeah?
Yes, I'm responsible for administering the county's zoning code.
Okay.
I have two teams on my purview, the zoning administration. They handle site plans, the Board of Appeals, which would include variances, special exceptions, site design, architecture review. We review building permits for zoning requirements. Okay. We also handle zoning inspections that handles all the enforcement and making sure new businesses or homes are meeting all regulatory requirements that are required in the zoning code.
Okay, excellent. And Reed, tell us just a little bit about you. How long have you worked for the county government?
In December, I'll be here for 25 years.
Thank you for your ongoing service. What's your favorite thing about being a county government employee? Then we'll get to the hard stuff, but let's do the fun stuff first.
I really enjoy interacting with the public and be able to help them when I can, and also my coworkers. We've got a great team. I love all my coworkers.
Awesome.
It's a great team to work with.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for 25 years of service to our county. That's an impressive number, especially because you're only, 30, 35, right? That's how it...
33.
33, gotcha. I didn't want to mess up the estimate. So Reed, you're here talking to us today about all things zoning and permits, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. So give me an overview, please. What is zoning?
Zoning are a set of rules and regulations that it tells you what you can do in your property, where you can put something, how tall it can be, how big, how close it can be to your neighbor's property line, things like that.
And when we were talking before we started recording, Liz, you made such a good point that when we talk about zoning, we talk about it's the regulations for an individual, but it's also the regulations for the community, right? And you said something about what it means to your neighbor. Can you talk about that a little?
A lot of times you have to keep in mind that you have neighbors, and a lot of times what it is that you do does affect your neighbor. So it's a matter of being a good neighbor too, making sure it is that you check to make sure that, if you're doing something, you're putting something up that's really tall, that it doesn't shade somebody else's property if they have a garden or what have you. So I think uses are important to really understand with zoning.
Thank you for clarifying. Talk to us about, Reed, how somebody knows what they can do with their property. And I use the word do, that seems like such a broad verb, but how does somebody know what they can or can't do with their property?
That is not an uncommon question. Our staff will sometimes have to field, someone will come in, and I'm looking at a property, or I've got this property. They literally say, "What can I do with it?" And
I have land. What do I do with it? Okay.
And it's really funny. Sometimes you're like, "Okay, what do you want to do?"
What do you want to do?
And Reed, you bring up an important point. Here it is. Somebody says, "I have this land. What can I do with it?" It's not our job to tell you what to do. If they have an idea, then in which case we can show you in the code what.
So there's kind of two different approaches. Somebody could come in and say, "I have a property. What can I do with it?" And you can say, "Well, the code says you can do this." Or somebody could come in and say, "I have a property and I want to blank," and you can say, "This is where the code."
Yes.
Okay.
Typically, we try to say, "Well, what do you?" I guess at probing questions, what exactly do you want to do with your property? What are your plans? Because the code has a list of they're called permissible uses. These are things that all types of things you can do on properties in Charles County, depending on their zone. And depending what the zoning is on the property, you might be able to do this thing or not.
Mm-hmm. So the county has it spelled out.
Yes.
And our goal is that residents ask, and then they have an idea of what is and is not permissible. Yeah?
Correct.
Awesome. And how does someone know what they are? So, how do you go from I know my address, or I might want to buy this property, to being able to translate what that is? How do they determine what they can do, like a single family home?
Well, first you have to determine what the zoning is of the property, and you could reach out to our county staff, and we have an address or even just a location. They can usually track down the property.
Okay.
And because there's a zone, the commissioners have adopted zoning maps.
Okay.
And so in that those are derived from the county's comprehensive plan, which is a master plan. It's done updated every 10 years, and it's how they want the county to grow. Is the best way.
Yeah.
And that's our roadmap. That's our roadmap to the future, and the zoning map and the associated zoning code. Those are the regulatory tools to make that happen.
Excellent.
And is it fair to also say that the county commissioners have said, this is where we're going to put agriculture, this is where we're going to allow residential, this is what it is, we're going to call it a commercial zone, and here's where we're going to do the industrial.
Yes.
It's all part of zoning.
Yes, absolutely.
And am I correct? I was looking through some of the notes you gave me beforehand, and I'm learning about this too, which I love. I always love the chance for me to learn also. That the requested use has kind of some different. It can be allowed, or it can be allowed with this. Can you go over that? I thought that was really interesting.
Part of the chart is broken out by the type of uses, where it could be agricultural type uses, residential, commercial, industrial, recreational. You know, like. And it's based by zone. It's an easy chart. It's like uses, and then it has the types of zoning, the different zones that are there. But then you'll get either a choice of either permitted.
Totally allowed.
It's allowed.
Okay.
By right.
Yes, permitted with conditions. That means it's allowed, but you have to go to the section of code for what permissible uses with conditions.
Okay.
And it has a list of, like, you can do this thing, but you have to do A, B, C, and D.
Okay.
And those would be special exceptions.
No, that'll be permitted with conditions.
Permitted with conditions, okay.
It's like, just as, I'm going to be simplified. If you're allowed to do this, do a daycare, but it's with the condition of you have to have so many required off-street parking.
Okay.
You have to have your state license and things like that. It'll just
So
have to
it's
be,
not saying like special exception would be you have to do something different. This
Yes.
is you can do it if you have A, B, C, D.
Yes,
Okay.
you've checked the boxes.
Gotcha.
And the other one, like Ms. Theobalds mentioned, was special exception. That would be you'd have to go to the Board of Appeals and it's a process to get the commissioner said, we can do this use in this zone. However, we determine it's kind of an impactful thing, and could be a lot of things that the community might not like, and we may have to mitigate those issues.
Okay.
So
it's not a hard no, but it's we need to talk more about
Yes,
this.
it's a
and
public process.
This is not going to be easy, and we're going to have to sort through what this would actually look like. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And then the last one is
prohibited, and those are I guess if you ever look at the chart, it's blank.
Yeah.
There's a square. It's like there's the use, here's the zone, and it's blank. That means it's prohibited.
This puzzle piece is not going to go into that puzzle. Yeah. It's not happening.
I like the way you said that.
I appreciate that it's just blank. Like what's that expression? Like if I have to tell you, then you don't want to know. Then it's kind of like, yes, if it's blank, you can't do it. There are no directions. So what are some of the tools you said? A resident can always check in and call, but
with us,
we have some other cool online tools.
Yes, there's called the GIS. It's a county GIS interactive map. It's available on the county's PGM's website through our mapping services section. It is a really neat tool for planning any kind of project, and it's really easy to use, very intuitive. But it has different layers that you turn on and off. That aerial photos. I think they go back 5 years of the county. The actual zoning. So if you select the zoning thing, the map will light up with all the different colors, and you'll be able to tell which zone your property is. There are wetlands, forest conservation easements, all kinds of different tools if you're planning a project. So you can actually look on your property if there's any wetlands on the property. Any mapped wetlands will actually show up.
Interesting. So you put in your address in it. You can play around with it.
Yep.
Very cool.
Floodplain maps are available, overlay also. So, it's a very useful tool for planning a project.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Reed, these are like the nosy neighbor in me always likes the questions like this, right? Of like, what kind of calls do you get? What are the things that people in Charles County want to know if they can do or if they can't do? What are some of your frequently asked questions?
We get a lot of questions. People want to know if they can put a shed or a detached garage on their property.
Okay.
And what's involved in that? Do I need a permit and things like that? And just for clarify, just to make sure the public knows, pretty much everything you do needs a permit.
Okay.
Depending on how big the item is, depending what level of review it gets.
Okay.
So you might have to, typically on small sheds and things like, it's just a zoning permit. It's just making sure you're not putting it too close to your neighbor, or your neighbor's not putting it too close to your property or something like that. There are some size restrictions. You can't put there's a limit of 50%. Your accessory structure, your shed, can't be more than 50% less. Can't be more than 50% of the home.
So
you can't make your shed bigger than your house in most areas.
But my barn-demonium.
So it's pretty much it's allowed in most situations, provided you meet all the requirements under the code.
And what I hear you keep saying, I think, Reed, is that it's when we talk about zoning, it's not as black and white as allowed and not allowed. It's a lot of allowed with, or ask about this first, or understand this. So this is not, your job is not to go out there and say, you will always, or you will never, and this is what you can do and can't do with your property. Your job is kind of to navigate if you want this, it needs to be a that, or if you are looking for this, make sure you consider that before you start. Is that an accurate?
Yes, that is very
That we want
accurate.
people to kind of know the whys and the whats before they start that big endeavor. Okay. All right.
Because it's a lot of money for some people to do these projects, and if they go down too far down the rabbit hole, it could be. We want them to talk to us first, help us work with you to plan your project, so you get off on the right foot, get all your permits, and you don't have to.
I appreciate how you said that. Like, let's work together to get you on the right foot is a nice way of looking at it. That this isn't, Liz, go ahead.
And absolutely, this tracks on what it is that we spoke about in the opening of this series, compliance.
Yeah.
The whole issue is there are regulations. We want to be in compliance with them, and we don't want you to go starting to invest a lot of money, invest a lot of resources into getting somebody to contract to do something, and then to find out that you're not in compliance with the regulation, and that makes the county look like the bad guy. But really, there are so many things that you can do. You just need to come and ask first.
That makes sense. All right, so sheds. What's another thing that you get a lot of questions about?
We get livestock and farm animals as pets.
Okay.
We get a lot of those, and like we said earlier, there are provisions that do allow that, with provided you meet certain conditions, because there are certain acreage requirements.
Okay.
And you can only have, because it's for pets, is typically you're on a smaller lot, like a 3-acre property, so you're going to have not as much space. So you can only have X number of pets, farm animals as pets per acre. So there are acreage requirements for size minimums and the total number of animals you're technically allowed under the code. If you're a farm, like you're over 5 acres or larger, typically livestock is allowed with provided you meet all the setback requirements. So you're not putting the manure storage too close to your neighbor or the animal. So because at the end of the day, as Ms. Theobalds put it, you also at the end of the day you want to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
I mean you want to try to be a good neighbor, and also related to pets, you should also consider that. Being a neighbor, you might have responsibilities under a homeowners association covenant or something like that. You might want to check those also.
So even if even if my address says I have 2 horses at home, even if my address says I have 2 horses at home, if my homeowners association says no horses, that doesn't fall under you guys. That becomes an issue with the homeowners association.
They might get mad at you for that.
They might not like my horses. This is crazy talk. Who would not want my horses on their property?
I'm really glad you brought up the thought of the covenants and other restrictions on the property. Those are private restrictions, and those are things that have to be complied with, even apart from what it is that's allowed in the zoning. So I think that's important, and I think it's a lot of...
Because if I called Reed's office and he can only give me the guidance, the answers, the stipulations that are related to Charles County Code, not related to anything private, right?
The
so
private
that would be my
restriction
job
is
to
the
find
first
something
thing.
that,
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Reed, what's the best piece of advice that you would give our residents? I always like to have kind of what's the one takeaway if somebody's listened or watched this episode and, it's a lot of information all at once, but what's the one thing you want them to walk away with knowing?
Prior to starting a project, or try to do this thing like getting farm animals or something like that on your property, please contact us. You can call, You can. I strongly recommend, especially if you're planning a project, to request an appointment with our staff.
Okay.
We, on the county website under the PGM. Planning Growth Management section, there's actually requested appointment.
Perfect. I'll make sure we link to that in the show notes so people can get to it directly. Yeah.
Online form, you can fill out all your information. You talk about your project. You can upload, drawings and things like that. Whatever you have, whatever you're proposing, and give us as much information as possible what you want to do, because that guarantees we can get the right people in front of you. You can request either a phone interview, meeting, a virtual or like Zoom style meeting, or an in-person. You can set that up, and all the people will be there. You can talk to us, and we can ask you questions and try to get more information to help point you in the right direction so you can be better prepared to obtain all your required permits and try to avoid noncompliance.
Exactly. And I think I would only follow that up by saying, and I do believe that the more information that somebody comes in with, the better you can point them to what they have to comply with. But I think the other part of it, and I guess this is why they asked the lawyers to be here.
We always want the lawyer here.
No,
go ahead.
But the truth in the matter was that we don't necessarily give advice. What we can do is point you to the applicable regulation for what it is you want to do, but we don't give advice. We don't develop your lot. We don't give you anything other than here's what it is that you need to comply with.
Yep.
That's an excellent part of feedback, that this is not, our job is to help explain, educate on, and share the code, not to help you interpret the code for your own project. Am I saying that accurately?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I just need Liz to follow me everywhere and be my personal lawyer. So when I open my mouth, she's like, don't say that. Not like that. Don't do that. It's very helpful to have. Anything else that you guys want to mention in today's episode about all things zoning permits?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
I think you did a wonderful job covering what it is that a new resident or any resident would need to know. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for helping addressing our legal issues.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. Reed Faasen, who is our zoning administrator, and Liz Theobalds, our deputy county attorney. Thanks for joining us for Cracking the Code. We hope that if you have questions about other things related to regulation, zoning ordinances in Charles County, you'll check out some of our other episodes and look forward to new episodes where we talk about how you can understand Charles County's code and regulations. Thanks so much, Charles County. Take care, stay safe, and stay engaged.
Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast and want to hear more, search Charles County Government on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And be sure to like and subscribe. We're also available on YouTube. Search Charles County Commissioners. And stay connected for all county news, information, and programs by visiting www.charlescountymd.gov/stay connected.